know, John, I don't know if we will have the Rotary meeting, because not everybody goes to the banquet, but I don't know the answer to
New
that.
moon.
Sir?
I said we have a new moon that day.
Oh, that's always exciting.
Yes.
Good afternoon, Cary Rotary Club. Welcome to our, boy, it sure feels like Monday, meeting of the Cary Rotary Club this afternoon. It's been a busy one already. Can I call on Darren Gay, please, to lead us in the invocation?
Absolutely. Thank you, Bob. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for the opportunity for us to come together on this wonderful, wonderful day provided for us, Lord, and as we pass that Memorial Day weekend, we just thank you for all the servicemen and women who have served our country over the years, who continue to serve to this day, Lord. We just ask that you be with them, guide them, help them with their each and every day daily decisions. Bless this food, Lord, the nourishment of our bodies, and precious in the name of Christ.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. God bless America. Let our love stand beside her and guide her through the night with light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans wide with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home. All right, thank you, Darren. No problem. Kristen Sutton, you're on the move. Can you help us introduce our guests and visiting Rotarians today?
Yes, I'm so excited. We have Robin Leckie here, who is a guest of Bill Fletcher. Bill, do you want to say some words?
I would. Robin is just going to get her lunch.
Oh.
She is the creative teacher that 2 years ago working with us. She's been a tremendous support to close to me and any activities that have had to do with this program in our schools, and she continues to do that today, helping us crack a few labels over here. So, Robin, thank you.
Welcome, Rob. We'll welcome her when she comes back in. You put her to work, Bill. You made her work for her Mia.
Oh, so she's gonna put us to work.
Yes.
Like, some sweat was happening out there.
Good point.
That's what teachers do, okay? They just jump in and do.
No idle time. And then we have our visiting Rotarian, Jim Smith.
Oh, thank you for that. Little opportunity.
Hello, Jim. Welcome, Jim.
Just an inspiration.
Right? Isn't it?
Well, yeah, I'll say that.
And am I missing anyone else that I did not name as a guest? Okay, I'm trying to pause because I'm not to get recognition, but it's not working. So that's it for me.
Well, she's working her way through the Celebrant Live. We'll make sure that gets done. Bill, did you? I was busy chasing. Did you share the purpose of our project today?
What we were doing today, and thank you all the club members who showed up to help. You may remember that we were not able to really operate our Read a Book, Get a Book program in the manner that we prefer, which is in the schools and small rooms before school starts every day. And so the money is being repurposed to purchase books that will be used in the reading recovery program, otherwise known as Read to Achieve, that will happen this summer for probably somewhere around 4,000 second and third grade. We're providing these books that are that the students will own. The two books, Engineers Solve Problems and Engineers Build Models. And this is the theme of the instruction that will happen around reading. But we're providing these books. They will go to 650 kids. That's what our budget, more than our budget could afford. And we're putting labels in, and the deal is about the label. This book doesn't have one. Inside each book, we're putting a name plate where the student can put their name. This book belongs to me, and it says student. It says student engineer following their name. One of the research findings out there about learning to read is kids in low-income communities, and lots of our kids who are getting reading recovery, that bill, do not have books at home. So that's the objective of this, is for the kids to have these two books. They can read them, they can color on them, whatever they want to. They'll be their books, and maybe the first books they've ever owned. So thank you, club members, for helping us get labels on.
Thank you, Bill. And welcome, Robin. We introduced you while you were gone. Chase, welcome to Robin. Let's give an ovation, ladies and gentlemen. Robin and all the great work she does for us. Thank you, Bill. Two other very brief announcements. I wanted you to be aware. There's some literature that I distributed on each of the tables. A number of folks have asked about what's happening with Rotary in the Ukraine. And so tomorrow there will be a special Zoom meeting that will address some of those concerns and questions, and will link up with Rotarians in the Ukraine during that meeting. So I encourage you to, if you have, I think it's noontime tomorrow, if you have time, link on. I know Paul's already registered. Thank you, Paul, for representing us. Also, if you open some of the email that I send you, you'll see that the meal packing event associated with our chili dinner will take place on Saturday, June 11th. That's a week from Saturday now. Time is getting short. So there is a sign up genius. If you click on the link in the email, you can sign up for a shift. The goal is to pack 110,000 meals. So we'll have a chance to continue our impact there. There'll be more information, and I'll send another email with that sign up genius. With that, can I ask John Amarante, Van Starling, and Jerry Miller to come forward? See. Well, Van and John, this is the moment I described to you. Jerry, thank you. where we have an opportunity to welcome you as inductees of the Cary Rotary Club. So it's my privilege today to welcome you into membership in our club. Van was proposed for membership by Jerry and also George Shorten. I had the privilege of proposing John for membership, and that's been reviewed in accordance with our Constitution and the bylaws of the club. And both John and Van have been accepted as members. So we now proceed to admit you to membership in our club, and so the Fellowship of Rotary around the world. It's been explained to you that our ideal is service and our motto is service above self. Our principal motto and the object of the club and all Rotary clubs is to encourage and foster this ideal of service as worthy enterprise. You'll share in this effort. You've been approved for membership in the club because we believe that you will be worthy of representing our club. You're interested in the ideals of Rotary and willing to do your share in translating the ideals into tangible realities. And you've agreed to accept the obligations attached to your membership in the club. So now I have the pleasure of pinning to you the Rotary pin. Please wear it with pride as a signal of your membership in our club and in our organization. I will ask the members of the club to please welcome John Amarante and Dan Starr.
Beth,
Yeah,
I'm on Rotary up here on Zoom.
okay, I brought you stuff.
You brought a sub home?
Yeah.
Oh, thanks. I'll be down to get it right before the program starts. They're just doing introductions now, so I'll come on down.
One, two, three. Thanks, y'all.
Oh, yeah, this is.
Okay, let's take the intra-club rivalry offline for now. We all know who the Rotary Club is.
The old men of their day.
All right, I will tell you, John and Van, that like many other organizations, we've been hit by supply chain challenges. And so at our next meeting, you'll receive the red badge that will signify you as a new member of our club. And we'll talk a little bit more about how you change that. So, but welcome to our club. I'm thrilled to have you. All right, with that, can I ask Paul Sossman to come and introduce our speaker for today?
Hey, Todd.
I'll clap for you. Who was that?
Thank you. Our guest speaker today is David Bohm, and David is the Director of Development for MyFutureNC. And he's responsible for developing strategic partnerships. Most recently, David served as the Director of Campbell Law School's development program, where he created and planned the expansion of the school's impact on the local community. David holds a bachelor's degree from Wabash University and a law degree from Wabash School of Law. He also has a Master of Law degree from Loyola University in Chicago and an executive certificate from a nonprofit leadership program at Duke University. He's originally from Kansas and now lives in the Cary area with his wife, son, and daughter. Please welcome David Bohm.
Good afternoon, everybody. Always a pleasure to be in front of a warm, welcoming crowd, even with hecklers in this. This is all good. Even when you have the inter-rivalry, that's good. We promise to keep this short, sweet, and simple. As Paul introduced me, David Bohm. I will say not a lifelong resident of North Carolina, but I got here as quickly as I could. Started off in the practice of law, but that wasn't necessarily fueling my heart, and got into nonprofit work. So I'm now 14 years, celebrating 14 years as a recovering attorney, where I have not been in the active practice of law, but doing things like this, jumping in to do fundraising opportunities for nonprofits that are making a great impact across our state. So MyFutureNC, quick show of hands, has anybody heard of it? Or for those who have heard about it, a quick show of hands, not very many, that's great. because I will be able to fill you in on this. So where's our clicker? We work on something called a fancy phrase. Imagine, if you will, post-secondary educational attainment. That's a fancy way of saying we want people in North Carolina to have some sort or form of degree or high quality credential in order to fill the jobs that are open in our state that require a degree or credential. So you know about the stats of Wake County. We live in a very, very wonderful area. Lots of economic activity that's going on. We've got a fascinating number of jobs. Businesses are coming in groves, and we got this workforce supply chain issue that we can't fill quickly enough. Quick stats out there. You've heard that number. 64 people move to the county every day. Every day, 64 people are coming here, but we still have labor and workforce needs. So imagine, if you will, I'm sitting here in a room filled with business-minded individuals, whether you own a business or you're working for a business. How is your workforce needs and hiring needs right now? How many open positions do you have? How much growth are you projecting for the future, and how are you going to fill those needs? So if you'll indulge me for a second and close your eyes. If you were to envision a North Carolina that was solid in terms of its economic development, workforce needs, and educational opportunity, what would that look like for you? Got that image burned in your head yet? So just keep that in mind. Whatever that image looks like for you, what does the North Carolina, the healthy North Carolina look like for you? Here's the issue we are facing in North Carolina. 2/3 of the workforce jobs that we have here currently in the present require some sort of degree or credential. Less than half of the population in North Carolina right now have that degree or credential. So that's a current stat for now. And when you look at the pipeline, people coming through the education pipeline, only 1/3 of individuals 6 years post-graduation of high school will obtain a degree or credential. Now, I'm only from Kansas, so I'm not that great at math. I did not graduate from the North Carolina institution. But you look at 2/3 of our jobs require it. Only half of North Carolinians have it. And there's only 1/3 coming through that pipeline. We've got this going on, folks. We're getting wider apart, not closer together. So we are working as a nonprofit to help close that gap. Little background on us, we are still a new nonprofit. We were formed in 2019 when legislation was passed. North Carolina passed an aspirational law that says that they want 2 million North Carolinians to have a degree or credential by the year 2030. Currently, we have about 1.4 million individuals in that pipeline. So we want to move that needle between now and 2030 to hit 2 million to have that degree or credential. What happens if nothing was done? If we didn't exist, if there was nobody tackling this problem? This slide's a little bit dated. It's moved. It used to be 300,000 people short by the year 2030. It's actually now 400,000 individuals short. So that's the gap we're trying to close in North Carolina in all 100 counties. How do we come together as an entity or organization, as a nonprofit? We are working on 3 pillars: education, business, and government. Those are the representatives that we want around the table, and you can see a snapshot of who those individuals are based on our current board of directors who's represented around the table. We have the institutional leaders from the UNC system, from our private independent colleges and universities, our community colleges. We have legislators on there. In other words, we wanted to fully stack this board with the folks that could actually pass and implement policy change in North Carolina. You can see on the philanthropy, those are other areas that we have represented on our board. As we are a nonprofit, we rely solely on grants in order to fund our interests. We do not have any government dollars or support coming in. We rely purely on funders to help us with those efforts. So this is not going to come as a surprise to you. Those who earn a degree or credential make more money. So that's a part of what we want to do, is to solve our employment opportunity, but also put people on a pathway for generational wealth. If you earn a degree or credential, you will make much more money in your lifetime, as represented in that graph on the left, to say if you have a 4-year degree or more versus the dotted line on the bottom there, and that's just a GED or just graduating from high school. The chart on the right shows what happens in the Great Recession. Those who have that degree or credential are less likely or not the first ones to be laid off. The first ones that are going to be impacted by a recession are those with less education to their name. And that just charts out the way it looks. Talked about what we say in North Carolina as a leaky pipeline. So out of 100 individuals who attend high school, you start to see people dropping out of that pipeline. So you see there's people that don't complete high school on time. There's people that don't transition into a college opportunity upon graduating high school. You see people who enroll but don't come back for a second year of that college. And finally, you get down to those who will not, they'll still be in college, but within 6 years, they do not complete that degree or graduate program. What does that mean? Again, this comes down to there's 69% of people dropping out of the pipeline, leaving us with only 31% who are moving through that education pipeline to get a degree or certificate to help fill these jobs that we currently need in North Carolina. I don't know about you folks, but did you know we only have 31% of our students who are earning a degree or credential coming out of high school? Shockingly low. So how are we addressing that? We are attacking this issue with data. We're letting data do the talking. At most tables, I was able to sprinkle out some of the data here that we have available. Some of these are called county attainment profiles. We have these on all 100 counties. Based on where your table is, it might be for Wake County or it might be for another county. But I just printed that off as an example of representation. From that, we're tracking everything from poverty rates, broadband access. In other words, what we see as the barriers to folks earning that degree or credential. We're tracking that everywhere from pre-K in the pipeline up to employment. So we're tracking the data to get people in that pipeline and where they fall, and I'll say where the pressure points are. Where are the pain points along the way and standing as a barrier for folks to earn that degree or credential. The bottom part of that chart is where it's getting into college. And then finally, I want to point out the the light blue strip at the very bottom shows what are the top economic opportunities for a county. In other words, where are you seeing the greatest economic needs employment-wise? And I forget what someone's saying there in Wake County, if I can read that from across the road. With the opportunities for growth to help address our post-secondary educational access is more guidance counselors, having more enrollment in career and college promise, and then helping out with our North Carolina pre-K enrollment. That's where we see the data pointing us in the direction to say, how can we help address the needs, get folks through that education pipeline? Here I'm just pulling out some of the stats that are shown on that data. How are we measuring this success? So as we're looking at ways from pre-K up to employment, we've got 4 buckets that we are tracking. That's it. We got to get people into school and getting them ready for success. We got to give them access to the educational opportunities. We got them to complete that high school opportunity and get into a career pathway. And then finally, what people are coming out with needs to match up to what the labor market needs are. As a person who has a 4-year political science degree, that doesn't really match up to, I'll say, an employment need in our current economic situation, with the exception of going into law school, which is that was my career. But we want to make sure that people are on not only on a career pathway, but a career pathway that's going to get them into gainful employment. Some of the key performance indicators, this is again, all data that's available on our website that you can access and research, but it's in those four buckets of being ready, having access to the educational opportunity, completing. And this one, you can't see it up there on the screen, it's too small for you, but it's tracking by demographics. We will fine tune this in there. And as you can imagine, you can see how are the performance by race and ethnicity, by gender. And you can see green means good, red means those are opportunities, as in those are gaps that need to be closed. So if you're in the red, you're not doing so well. If you're in the green, you're doing okay. And as you can see, there's some blue and some blanks on there and some whites and in between. So this is how we're going to measure our progress from the 2 million to 2030. What are we doing? We're equipping folks locally to serve as the opportunity to reach individuals who can be the students that get that degree or credential. We're not a direct service provider. We want to equip those who are already in the communities, bring them around the tables, give them toolkits, ideas, brainstorms, goals, and then give them equipping power to go out to have folks in this pipeline to get that degree or education. We're doing that currently with a pilot of 15 of what we call local collaboratives. Those 15 who are in the pilot are touching 38 counties. And you can see those represented in the lime green, the counties that we're currently in. This will eventually grow into 2023 to where we'll probably be in all 100 counties with some sort of local collaborative effort. And that's bringing together your business leaders, your local government leaders, your leaders in education in those counties to identify how are you addressing your economic needs, your economic workforce by getting folks through this education pipeline. For those who had students, your children who have been through, or maybe it's at this point grandchildren, have you heard of FAFSA before? Free application for federal student aid. This is, I'll call it a pain point for those who have recently filled out that form. They're asking for all sorts of financial information that they can then make a determination as to whether you have access to Pell Grants, federal money that you can use for education. I hate to tell you this, but North Carolina is a little bit behind the curve in terms of the completion of this. 125 million, I'll mention that again, 125 million of money that was left on the table, not billion, but just millions here. That was our share of Pell Grants that North Carolinians left unclaimed with the federal government because people did not fill out their FAFSA form. They fill this out to get into college. It can be part of your scholarship needs. This counts towards payment of your tuition. So if you fill out the form, which is not easy to do, but if you fill it out, you can qualify. That's how you get access to these federal funds. So we want to see that number go up more towards 80%. Right now, we're tracking about 55, 58% in terms of completion on an annual basis. And we're trying to see that number go up. One of the barriers that people face, money to pay for access to education. Well, folks, here's free federal money that's available out there for you that does not have to be repaid. Those are grants coming in from our scholarships. So what are the quick takeaways from what, as an organization? North Carolina, as you know, is a growing state. We're going to have more of these employment and economic needs to build up our workforce. We've got to get more people not only into the pipeline, but finish the pipeline with a career pathway that is going to fuel somebody's heart, but also match up to our economic realities of what we have in North Carolina. Again, we're viewing this as a way for upward mobility for communities, not just in the urban areas, but specifically in the rural areas. We want folks to have this career pathway and opportunity to mobilize their efforts to get in a better place for themselves and achieve not only economic prosperity, but on the pathway to build generational wealth. The question I always get at these presentations, well, what can we do to help, David? Very quick way. We ask for endorsements. An endorsement is a very simple way to say that you as a business or an individual stand up and support the 2 million by 2030 goal. That's the aspirational state goal. Does not obligate you to do anything, but we like to collect names of businesses and have logos on our website to say this number of businesses, whether it's in education or government or otherwise, or all industries and sectors represented, stand up at 2 million by 2030 goal. We would love for more awareness to be done around this FAFSA completion so that we're not leaving all these federal dollars unclaimed. We'd love for you to take those county attainment profiles. If you can work that into what you do for a living or share that with folks that need access to data, steer them to it. Those are all downloadable, they're printable, or you can just do the electronic version. We've got an interactive map of the state. You just hover your mouse over the county that you want to see the data on, and you can fine tune and I'll say sort the data however you want. And then finally, as I mentioned before, we are a nonprofit, so we look for opportunities for folks to invest in us so that we can do this work on a statewide basis. Data is our largest item that costs. It's very, I'll say cost prohibitive to get not only access to it, but then also to discern and have this data put into these charts. So those are the things that we looked at and have estimated that it costs approximately $15,000 per county to put that stuff together on an annual basis. I have left some time for, I know how precious your time is. Definitely want to leave time for questions and Q&A out there. I find that's a more interactive way to engage this crowd, a very important crowd like this, to be able to answer those questions. Right, and then I see a hand up here up front.
I was just going to ask about the FAFSA and the completion form.
Yes,
I think what you find is a lot of times with wealthier folks or people that earn above a certain threshold, they've already been told they're not going to qualify anyways. So why bother doing that is kind of what I hear. If we wanted to have better completion, if everyone was at least eligible to some of that money, if certainly there wasn't 100 million students last year going to college, I think that you would find greater representation of people doing it if they knew that if I did nothing else to just complete this, I would at least get $1,000 or something. Because when you make too much money, you say, why bother? It's not.
The bother and the access, and I should back up a little bit. A lot of our efforts are aimed towards folks who are experiencing, so it's not necessarily going to be for those who have means to pay for college themselves. We are dealing a lot with first generation students, our underserved and underrepresented population groups who've never heard of FAFSA, don't know about it, have cost as a barrier to their education. But for the fact of knowing how to complete it, or is this available to them? And I'll say too, quite frankly, a lot of folks that don't have access, or their parents won't complete it, and the students don't have access to their parents' financial information. Parents could be separated. They may not have information to share financially. So there's a lot of different challenges of the reasons I see for the FAFSA completion rate being so low. But you're at a very valid point too. Some of that is, I'll say, non-participation for folks who will not qualify for those funds. Rod.
My question was the chart that you shared with 100 kids is really striking. Does MyFutureNC do any kind of research into what has people drop out at those stages, like the 13% that don't finish high school? What accounts for that?
What happens to them? There's something called, and you may have heard this term or not, it's not necessarily a dropout rate, but what they're calling now in North Carolina, opportunity youth between the ages of 16 and 24. At age 16, an individual, a youth, a teenager can drop out of school. Can't force them to be in school. So we're looking at things like raise the age in terms of what I'll call the dropout rate, is ways that we can impact and see to keep them in that education pipeline longer. But there's a myriad of reasons. Again, folks, it might be a health issue, dealing with the family, have to go to work because the family member is out, or to help support the financial needs of the family, that they are not complete that. We're seeing instances where folks are not, they're told, again, as a first generation student, you don't have, what are you talking about college? We're not worthy of college. You're not worthy of college. I didn't complete college, don't even think about that. Just go get yourself a job somewhere. Well, that job somewhere is going to most likely require, unless it's going to be, I'll say, a server within the fast food industry by way of your hourly minimum wage jobs, which is not going to build generational wealth. We want folks thinking about that career pathway that is going to be stackable. And maybe it's getting your foot in the door in the healthcare as a radiology technician, by way of example, and then build upon that with stackable credentials that can get you on a pathway even further in that healthcare pipeline. Yes, we got one over here. Let's go over here first.
Well, when you speak of credential,
Yes,
exactly what do you mean by that?
wonderful question. I'm sorry, I should have explained a little bit more about that. So this is going the career and technical education route, something less than a 4-year degree, something less than a 2-year associate's degree. This could be your HVAC certification. This could be your construction, yes, your trades, absolutely. I don't know if anybody has asked for or needed a repair for HVAC here as of late. If you can find a company that's available out there. So those are opportunities for folks to be on a career pathway through our trades. Construction is a huge one. Just getting folks, I hear from the construction industry, just finding a workforce to hang drywall. Again, a skilled trade that's out there that's getting more than a minimum wage. There's a workforce shortage there. So thinking about it in those sort of terms, whether it's electrical, running the electrical wires in your house or in your office, having that opportunity. Welding is a huge one out there. If you can find a welder, they can make 6 figures after going to getting their certification or their credential after about, I think it's like 6 months. It's probably even less than that where folks can be on that. So we look at those sort of ideas. How can our employers, our businesses have an apprenticeship sort of model? We want folks, one, coming through that pipeline, but we also want them to land with an opportunity. As a business, if you're trying to recruit a workforce, the best workforce I think you can get and people who will stay with you is if they come through an introduction of apprenticeship or a mentorship model. We're finding businesses that are setting those up, and they're setting up their own pipeline of workers coming through. If they're in high school and you can get them school credit to earn towards graduation, or even if they're college, to get college course credit to come through that pathway, they can earn a living, come out fully trained, and that helps the businesses. The folks graduate, they step right into that job and they're off and rolling. They're not spending 6 weeks or 6 months learning those skills on the job. They're already trained and they're ready. Our community colleges are huge in this environment. We have 58 community colleges across the state. I forget what the stat is. I think that everybody in North Carolina lives within an hour, approximately an hour of one of our community colleges. So getting access to that through Lake Tech, Johnson Community College, Durham Tech, so on and so forth.
So you mentioned FAFSA and Pell Grants, but what are you doing to bridge? Because Pell Grants are not a lot of money and typically doesn't cover the entire cost. So even if you fill out the form, there's the barrier, but it doesn't include, even if you're an hour away, it seems close.
Yeah.
But if you're already disadvantaged, chances are you don't have a car to get you there. The gas prices the way they are. So how do we do that? And then you also mentioned, I have another question.
Yeah.
You also mentioned raising the dropout age. How does that affect it when I think the issue actually starts earlier? And most high school teachers I know actually like to teach junior and seniors, because by that point, the people who have dropped out, who are the troublemakers, are already out of the class and they actually get to teach at that point.
Right.
Versus become,
Yeah. All great issues. And these are the things that we poll within the community to have them sit around the table to identify where are you seeing that pain point within that education pipeline. So things of attending school, of whether that's a community college or one of our 4-year institutions out there. So we don't have opportunities to plug people into scholarships, and we're not branding away, but we want to make folks aware of what those opportunities are at the various institutions. Transportation, Wake Tech is a great example of that. They have worked out through the bus lines in Wake County. Now, not every county has got a bus line that can run out and get people there, or a bus pass, that sort of transportation issues. But it's identifying what those pressure points are. Daycare. Daycare is a huge one for folks to jump in the community college system. Folks want to participate and go to class, but who's going to watch the kids? So if I can attend the class, so community colleges are actually looking at opportunities to have on-site daycare of some form of fashion. But it's the ability to identify what those issues are, talk through a plan long-term where they would be on that, and then identify what the solutions to get folks through the pipeline. It won't be, it's like trying to solve world hunger. There's always going to be some form or fashion of it. And it's a very big item to try to digest, but you got to take those steps along the way to remove. You may not get all the barriers, but you got to have people thinking about it. Our concern is that businesses are thinking about this, but they shouldn't have to go it alone or do it within a vacuum. Education systems are thinking about it, but our state institutions or four-year colleges are not necessarily thinking about it in tandem with community college. We want to make sure that those barriers are down and they're not doing it in a vacuum, that they're doing it collaboratively and together and sharing a lot of those best practices. So I see a hand in the back.
Not trying to look at this, I think you guys are looking for this through rose-colored glasses.
Okay.
The problem, you mentioned community colleges. I almost spent 37 years in community college. I think you've got more than 1 out of 3 students who comes to you from a high school who either cannot add or subtract, read or write, and you expect us to be miracles. I think we need to stop saying that we've got to teach everybody all of the social graces, and we need to teach people how to read and write and do math. For years, you sit there and see the problems coming in, and the situation is not getting better. I mean, your statistics up there prove that it is not getting better. It's got to start in kindergarten or before kindergarten, and it's got to be with the importance of this child needs to read. I mean, give a book. Bill's doing magnificent, trying to get books into houses where he says that nobody's got a book. Yeah. We need to talk about these issues and not, we need all of these people up here, because you're not going to get those people up there if you don't get these people to understand the values before they get to a community college. Now, I'll get off my soapbox, but I'm telling you, I had 37 years of seeing this stuff, and it is not getting better. And Wake County is in the news, the national news today, because we're teaching kids what's red, white, and blue with a pregnant gal.
Yeah, so thinking about that and being able to address those issues and having that forum to talk about it. And I think this goes back to the question over here of where do you address that along the pipeline? It's not just a high school issue, or it's not necessarily a middle school issue. It's going all the way back to pre-K, which is where our data starts. And by measuring out that data, you can see where you can come in and close gaps and make those opportunities. But it's at the local level. Each local community has got to make that decision and investment. We don't have, I'll say, the magic answers, and it's not a one-size-fits-all solution. We're there to equip the local communities to identify what they want to accomplish and achieve. Bill.
David, thank you for your work. The
Sure.
information you shared. An observation, well, both, I guess. The research stops at pre-K.
Yeah.
We got 3 or 4 years before pre-K is called parenting.
Yeah.
And if parents are not reading to their children, even in utero, students will not have the vocabulary to enter school. Yep. So is there any conversation from your organization about stirring up the parenting pot? So we can improve access to vocabulary just by our parents reading to their children, whether the children understand it or not. It's critical that we've got to change that somehow. And that's outside the school system.
Right.
That's outside, that is our community, our culture that has to create that expectation that children are read to every day, all day.
A great observation. I would say it is not our sweet spot to go back into before what I would call the early education stages, arriving up to pre-K. And that data is available because that's the first and earliest data that we can, on a statewide basis, obtain. There are other nonprofits who are out there in that early education space who are doing some of that work. So we are not only aware of it, but I will say empowering and engaging them with the data that we have available. But I will say, again, we're looking at that other side of that, of the spectrum.
My comment, each of the gaps you talk about is a person who's not currently employed to provide that service. The school districts, the community colleges have employed everybody their budgets will allow to fill the gaps that are there, whether they're social and emotional, whether they're academic, whatever they are. The funding for people is what the issue is, ultimately.
Yeah.
And the battle between the legislature and courts, our children are losing, our economic development is suffering because of it. Senator Berger, say yes.
Here we go, Rod, and then in the back.
That's a segue to my question. I know Pat's got a job to do, but that's a segue to my question, which is, I really appreciate the work that MyFutureNC is doing to convene people and generate these types of ideas. So then, once those great ideas are engendered, how do we fund those things? What is MyFutureNC doing?
Great idea. So we're collecting a lot of those best practices, making them available. If it's something that involves engaging the legislature, that is a way that we can advocate for funding. Great example of that, we don't have enough guidance counselors. You know, we should have that ratio down from whatever 400 plus students down to about 350 students per guidance counselor. Should we also add, as an idea, career counselors? So folks, not only about guidance of getting through high school, but thinking about what a career pathway should be, which again goes back to Bill's comment, that takes money. Is that something we want to invest in? So we will see. One more question, then
That's it.
and then I'll get the hook over.
All right, look, my son is senior year at NC State.
Yes, sir.
Fill out a FAFSA and got a Pell Grant for, $20,000 at 7.5%.
Okay.
What's being done, A, to streamline the FAFSA process, and B, 7.5% to the kid coming out. Luckily, we were able to handle it. But, I mean, that's ridiculous. I mean, bullshit. That's 3 times. I mean, we could afford it. We had
So,
to have it.
yeah, we're working.
Back. But the point is, I think, I contend, the process is so many hoops to jump through.
Yeah.
That may be why there's 125 million on the table. A, and B, 7, even back then, when the prevailing rate was 1 or 2%, 7.5, and you look at the default rate on Pell Grants, kids can't handle it.
Yeah. So two different
Where's
things.
the help?
Two different things we're talking about there. On FAFSA, they're trying to make the form a little more efficient and easier to complete, but that requires change at the federal level for them to change the form. Definitely on the government side, but the Pell Grant is money to you, not a loan. And you're talking about, I think, the student loans at 7.5%.
It converts. It is converted into student loan.
I'm not familiar with the situation, so it's something that we can, I'll say,
Wasn't a kid.
shine a light on, but it's not something we're going to be able to move the needle on unless it's a federal policy change or a state policy change. So, but those, we want that conversation to happen.
My least favorite part of being a Rotarian is giving the hook to the speaker. But we do have a nice gift for you, and it's from Jerry Miller, who's here today. He's our resident artist. You know him. Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to carry on the conversation afterwards. Please see me. I'll give you a business card or contact information. All the data is on our website. Thank you very much to be in front of you and to have a lively, engaging discussion. That's what it's all about. We want this conversation to continue.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Pat. It's not an easy role to be in, to be defining all of the problems and trying to shine light on where the issues are. So I appreciate your willingness personally and your organization's willingness to help do a thorough diagnosis of what the root causes may be for this gap in North Carolina. And may we unify around potential solutions. Let me move on to recognize one of our Zoom attendees, Kevin Peach, will be celebrating his birthday on Saturday, June 4th. Happy birthday, Kevin. John Amarante joined the club just in time for us to recognize his birthday on Sunday. Happy birthday, John. Blair Hatcher, the son, John's son, Blair, will celebrate a birthday. Happy birthday, Blair. I'll wave to you here. I'll see you there. Wow, and Bob Lyerly is celebrating a birthday also on Monday. So we have like 100% perfect attendance of people with birthdays. It's great. Many more to all of you. Also some anniversaries to celebrate. Carolyn Wasdell will be 7 years with the Cary Rotary Club tomorrow. Ron Fitzsimmons, 10 years with the Cary Rotary Club tomorrow. Thank you, Ron. Congratulations. Sally Shaver, 12 years. June 1st was a big day. Not always the same year, but it was a big day. But Sally will be celebrating her 12th anniversary. And both Bob Hatley and Gary Ashworth will be 40 years with the club, effective tomorrow. So when you see them, thank them and congratulate them, please. And we got one more special date coming up on June 3rd, which I guess is Friday. Happy anniversary to Jerry and Jean Miller.
Yay. 7 years. Each other.
Next week, Kathy Moore, Superintendent of Wake County Public Schools, will be with us. I have a feeling we may continue some of the conversation we started today. Thank you, Bill, for making that happen. Our lunch will be chicken Caesar salad. You want to come up here? You should take this one.
I did one.
In 2 weeks, Brittany Constance of Alliance Medical Ministries will be joining us. Thank you, Dr. Charlie Mann, for making that arrangement. And we'll also have a very brief program that we'll access through the YMCA in recognition of the Juneteenth holiday and what it means in our community today. So it'll be a special event. 4 short weeks from today, we'll be having our installation banquet, awards banquet, June 28th, 6 p.m., Prestonwood Country Club, an in-person meeting. You'll hear more about it. So I want to thank Jim for joining us today. I want to thank Robin. Thank you for joining us today and all your work supporting what we're trying to do as a club. I want to thank Tim Mannix for being our greeter today, Kristen for introducing our guests, Paul for introducing our speaker, Pat for thanking him. Without all of you, these meetings wouldn't happen. Before I call on our last event here, do we still have do we have work to do still, Bill?
We can take care of this later.
Okay. If you have a moment, there's an opportunity to help. Thank you for all of the work the club did today. 1,500 books with nameplates is a big thing. All right. Can I ask Rod Brooks to lead us out on the 4-way test?
Of course, the 4-way test of the things we think, say, or do first.
Is it the truth?
Is it
Fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? We are adjourned.